The theater fell silent as Isabella Reeves took her final bow. The spotlight painted her porcelain skin in golden hues. Her dark hair swept into a flawless chignon, not a single strand out of place despite the demanding 2-hour performance of Swan Lake. The audience erupted in thunderous applause, roses cascading onto the stage like crimson rain. At 38, Isabella remained America's most celebrated prima ballerina, a living legend who had graced the stages of Lincoln Center, the Kennedy Center, and countless prestigious venues worldwide. Brava! Brava! The voices echoed through the Metropolitan Opera House as Isabella smiled that practiced, radiant smile she had perfected over 2 decades. Behind her perfectly applied makeup, exhaustion tugged at her features, but she never let it show. Perfection was her brand, her identity, her prison. Backstage, her assistant Maria rushed forward with a silk robe. Another standing ovation, Ms. Reeves. The critics from the New York Times and Washington Post want interviews. Isabella nodded, her breathing still controlled despite the physical demands of the performance. Schedule them for tomorrow morning. I need to review the new students' applications tonight. The Isabella Reeves Academy of Dance had become as prestigious as her performance career. Located in Manhattan's Upper East Side, it attracted aspiring dancers from across the globe, each dreaming of following in her footsteps. Isabella had built this empire through relentless dedication, sacrificing personal relationships and countless opportunities for normalcy. Her penthouse apartment overlooked Central Park, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view that real estate agents called priceless. The space was immaculate, white marble floors, minimalist furniture, and walls adorned with photographs of her greatest triumphs. Awards and accolades filled custom-built shelves, each one a testament to her unwavering commitment to excellence. Isabella poured herself a glass of wine, the only indulgence she allowed in her strictly regulated life. Her phone buzzed constantly, with congratulations, interview requests, and business proposals, but she ignored them all. Tomorrow would bring another day of rehearsals, classes, and maintaining the image that had made her a household name. She settled into her favorite armchair with a stack of applications from prospective students. Each folder contained photos, resume, and recommendation letters from dance instructors worldwide. Isabella's standards were impossibly high. She accepted only 12 new students each year from hundreds of applicants. The first few applications followed the predictable pattern: wealthy parents seeking prestige, talented teenagers from suburban dance schools, international students with impressive credentials but lacking that indefinable spark Isabella demanded. She was about to set the stack aside when one folder caught her attention. The photograph showed a young man with striking features, sharp cheekbones, expressive dark eyes, and an elegant posture that spoke of natural grace. But it wasn't his appearance that made Isabella pause. It was something deeper, a quality she recognized from her own reflection years ago: raw hunger for artistic perfection. Daniel Torres, she read aloud, age 22, born in Austin, Texas, trained at Houston Ballet Academy. His essay described growing up in a working-class family, his mother cleaning offices at night to pay for his dance lessons, his father's initial disapproval giving way to proud support as Daniel's talent became undeniable. Isabella found herself reading every word twice. Daniel wrote about dance not as a career choice but as a necessity, like breathing. His technique videos showed remarkable ability, but more importantly, they revealed an emotional depth that transcended mere physical skill. When he danced, he became something more than human. He became art itself. Without hesitation, Isabella reached for her phone and dialed her assistant. "Maria, I need you to call Daniel Torres. Tell him he's been accepted into the academy. Classes begin Monday." As she hung up, Isabella felt an unfamiliar flutter of anticipation. In her 20 years of teaching, she had never been so immediately captivated by a student's application. She told herself it was purely professional interest. Daniel Torres represented the kind of raw talent that could elevate her academy's already stellar reputation. But as she stared at his photograph again, something stirred within her that had nothing to do with dance or professional achievement. It was a feeling she had buried so deeply under layers of discipline and ambition that she barely recognized it. For the first time in years, Isabella Reeves was curious about tomorrow for reasons that had nothing to do with her own performance. Monday morning arrived with the crisp bite of early October. The Isabella Reeves Academy buzzed with nervous energy as new students arrived, their parents trailing behind with mixture of pride and anxiety. The studio's mirrors reflected a rainbow of leotards and tights, each young dancer stretching and preparing for what they hoped would be a life-changing experience. Isabella stood at the front of Studio A, her reflection multiplied infinitely in the surrounding mirrors. She wore her signature black leotard and wrap skirt, her hair pulled back severely, every line of her body speaking of absolute authority. The new students arranged themselves at the bar, some confident, others trembling with nerves. "Welcome to the Isabella Reeves Academy," she began, her voice carrying the weight of 2 decades of excellence. "You are here because you have shown promise. But promise means nothing without dedication, discipline, and the willingness to push beyond what you believe are your limits." She walked slowly behind them, correcting posture with gentle but firm touches. "In my classes, there is no room for ego, no tolerance for excuses. You will work harder than you have ever worked in your lives, and some of you will discover that what you thought was passion was merely fascination." Her eyes swept across the group and landed on Daniel Torres. He stood at the far end of the bar, his focus absolute, his positioning already superior to students who had been training for years. When their eyes met through the mirror, Isabella felt that same unexpected flutter from the night she had read his application. "Mr. Torres," she said, her voice perhaps softer than intended, "would you demonstrate 5th position for the class?" Daniel stepped forward with fluid grace, his feet forming perfect lines, his arms creating an elegant oval. But it wasn't just his technique that commanded attention. It was the way he inhabited the movement, making even a basic position seem like poetry. "This," Isabella announced to the class, "is how every position should look. Not just technically correct, but artistically alive." The morning class progressed through bar work and center combinations. Isabella found herself watching Daniel more closely than the others, ostensibly to use him as an example for the group, but increasingly because she was genuinely captivated by how he moved. When he jumped, he seemed to hang in the air a moment, longer than physics should allow. When he turned, each rotation was perfectly centered, his eyes spotting with laser precision. During a brief water break, Daniel approached her with respectful confidence. "Ms. Reeves, thank you for accepting me into the academy. This opportunity means everything to my family and me." Up close, Isabella could see the sincerity in his dark eyes, the slight calluses on his hands that spoke of years of hard work. "Your application was exceptional, Mr. Torres, but applications don't dance. Show me in the coming weeks that my faith in you wasn't misplaced." "I won't let you down," he said, and Isabella believed him completely. As the weeks passed, Daniel proved himself beyond her highest expectations. He arrived early and stayed late, working through combinations until muscle memory made them effortless. But more than his dedication, it was his artistic instincts that set him apart. When Isabella demonstrated a phrase, Daniel didn't just copy the movements, he found his own truth within them. Their student-teacher relationship began to evolve into something resembling mentorship. Isabella found herself staying after classes to work with Daniel on particularly challenging pieces. These private sessions revealed layers of artistic depth that reminded Isabella why she had fallen in love with dance in the first place. "Feel the music in your spine," she instructed one evening as they worked on a complex adagio. "Let it travel through your body like electricity." Daniel closed his eyes, his body responding to her guidance with an intuition that took her breath away. When he moved, Isabella saw echoes of her own artistic passion, the pure love of dance that had been buried under years of professional pressure and public scrutiny. Like this? He asked, executing the combination with heartbreaking beauty. Exactly. Like that, Isabella whispered, her professional composure cracking slightly. Their eyes met in the mirror, and for a moment, the careful boundary between teacher and student blurred. Isabella quickly looked away, but the seed of something dangerous had been planted. That night, alone in her penthouse, Isabella found herself thinking about Daniel's dedication, his raw talent, the way he made even her familiar studio feel electric with possibility. She told herself her interest was purely professional, that she was simply recognizing exceptional artistic potential. But as she lay in bed, staring at the city lights beyond her windows, Isabella Reeves began to suspect that her perfectly controlled world was about to become beautifully, dangerously complicated. November brought an early winter to New York, painting the windows of the academy with frost and filling the studios with an intimate warmth that seemed to draw people closer together. Isabella had been teaching for 3 months since Daniel's arrival, and their artistic connection had deepened into something that kept her awake at night and distracted during her own rehearsals. The annual showcase was approaching, a prestigious event where selected academy students performed for agents, company directors, and critics who could launch or destroy careers with a single review. Isabella had chosen Daniel to perform a contemporary piece she had choreographed specifically for him, a decision that raised eyebrows among other instructors, but felt absolutely right to her artistic instincts. "The showcase is in 3 weeks," Isabella announced during their private coaching session. "This piece needs to be flawless." They had been working on the solo for hours, and Daniel's shirt clung to his body with perspiration, his hair damp around his forehead. Isabella tried to focus on his technique, but found herself noticing the way his muscles moved beneath his skin, the graceful curve of his neck when he tilted his head. "Something's not connecting," Daniel said, frustration evident in his voice. "I know the steps. I can execute them perfectly, but it feels empty." Isabella walked closer, studying his positioning. "This piece is about vulnerability, about showing your soul through movement. You're dancing it like a technical exercise. I don't know how to be vulnerable," Daniel admitted, his honesty catching Isabella off guard. "My whole life, I've had to be strong, focused, perfect. My family sacrificed everything for my training." The raw sincerity in his voice cracked something open in Isabella's chest. She saw herself in his struggle, the weight of expectations, the fear of disappointing, people who believed in you, the way perfection could become a beautiful prison. "Vulnerability isn't weakness," she said softly, moving to stand directly in front of him. "It's courage. It's choosing to show your truth even when it terrifies you." Their eyes locked, and Isabella felt the air in the studio shift. The careful, professional distance she had maintained for months dissolved in an instant. Without conscious decision, she reached up and touched his cheek, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "Isabella," Daniel whispered, her first name falling from his lips like a prayer. She should have stepped back, should have restored the proper boundaries, should have remembered her reputation, her career, her carefully constructed life. Instead, she kissed him. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if they were both testing the reality of the moment. Then Daniel's arms came around her waist, pulling her closer, and Isabella surrendered to feelings she had spent 20 years suppressing. When they finally separated, both were breathless. "This is insane," Isabella whispered, but she made no move to leave his embrace. "I know," Daniel replied, his forehead resting against hers. "I've been fighting this for weeks. You're my student. I'm 16 years older than you. My reputation..." "Your reputation is built on a lie," Daniel said gently. "You've spent so long being perfect for everyone else that you've forgotten who you really are." His words struck her like a physical blow, because they were true. Isabella Reeves, America's prima ballerina, was a carefully constructed persona. Underneath the public image was a woman who had sacrificed love, spontaneity, and authentic emotion for professional success. "If anyone finds out," she began. then will. Be careful, Daniel interrupted. But I can't pretend I don't feel this way about you. Against every rational thought in her head, Isabella found herself nodding. They would be careful, discreet. No one would ever know. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and secret meetings. They would stay late at the academy, working on his showcase piece while slowly exploring this new dimension of their relationship. Isabella's apartment became their sanctuary, the only place where she could drop her public mask and be simply a woman in love. Daniel's performance began to transform as their personal connection deepened. The vulnerability Isabella had been trying to coax from him emerged naturally, his dancing becoming a conversation between his body and his soul. Other students noticed the change, commenting on his newfound emotional depth, but no one suspected the source of his artistic evolution. He's extraordinary, Isabella's assistant Maria observed during a rehearsal. Whatever you're doing with him is working. Isabella smiled, knowing that Maria's innocent comment was more accurate than she could ever imagine. Daniel wasn't just becoming a better dancer. He was becoming himself, and in helping him find that authenticity, Isabella was rediscovering her own. The showcase arrived on a crisp December evening. The theater filled with industry professionals, Isabella's colleagues, and parents of the performing students. Isabella sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as Daniel took the stage. When the music began and Daniel started to move, Isabella forgot to breathe. Every gesture spoke of their private moments together. Every leap seemed to carry her heart with it. He wasn't just performing the choreography she had created. He was dancing their love story for an audience that had no idea what they were witnessing. The standing ovation was immediate and sustained. Several company directors approached Isabella immediately after Daniel's performance, offering contracts and praising her coaching. But Isabella only had eyes for Daniel as he left the stage, their gazes meeting across the crowded theater. Later at the reception, Isabella watched from across the room as agents and directors surrounded Daniel with offers and congratulations. He had achieved everything he had worked toward, and she felt genuinely proud of his success. "Congratulations on another triumph," a familiar voice said behind her. Isabella turned to find Jonathan Blackwell, the artistic director of American Ballet Theater and one of the most influential figures in the dance world. "Your student Torres is remarkable. Word is already spreading about tonight's performance." "Thank you, Jonathan. Daniel is extremely talented." "Yes, he is. I also heard something interesting about your close mentorship of young Mr. Torres," Jonathan said, his tone carefully neutral, but his eyes sharp with implication. Isabella's blood turned to ice. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Oh, I think you do. Be careful, Isabella. You've built an impressive legacy. It would be a shame to see it compromised by poor judgment." As Jonathan walked away, Isabella realized that their secret hadn't been as safe as they had believed. And in that moment, she understood that her perfect world was about to shatter completely. January brought unseasonably warm weather to New York, but Isabella felt as if she were living in perpetual winter. Jonathan Blackwell's veiled threat haunted her days and sleepless nights. She became hyper-aware of every glance, every whispered conversation that stopped when she entered a room, every knowing look from colleagues who had once treated her with unquestioned respect. The dance world was smaller than most people realized, and gossip traveled through it like wildfire. Isabella began noticing subtle changes in how people interacted with her. Conversations that ended abruptly when she approached, invitations to social events that didn't arrive, and a coolness from fellow instructors at the academy that hadn't been there before. "We need to talk," Isabella said to Daniel after their advanced class one February afternoon. The other students had left, and the studio felt cavernous in its emptiness. Daniel immediately sensed the tension in her voice. "What's wrong?" "People know," Isabella said simply, her words hanging in the air like smoke. "Or they suspect. Jonathan, Blackwell all but accused me outright at the showcase reception. Daniel ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Isabella had come to love, but now viewed with growing dread. "What does that mean for us?" "It means we have to end this," Isabella said, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "Before it destroys both our careers." "Isabella, no. We can't let other people's opinions dictate our lives." She laughed bitterly. "You don't understand the dance world like I do. Reputation is everything. One scandal can end careers, close academies, ruin lives. I've seen it happen. So what? We just pretend the last 4 months never happened?" Isabella looked at Daniel, really looked at him, seeing the pain in his eyes that mirrored her own. At 22, he still believed love could conquer practical realities. At 38, she knew better. "You have offers from 3 major companies," she said. "American Ballet Theater, New York City Ballet, and San Francisco Ballet. Any one of them would be a dream debut for a dancer your age." "I don't want to. Leave New York. I don't want to leave you." "Daniel, this is your future we're talking about. Don't throw it away for me." Their conversation was interrupted by Maria knocking on the studio door. "Ms. Reeves? There's a reporter here from Dance Magazine. She says she has an appointment." Isabella and Daniel quickly moved apart, but not before Maria's eyes registered their proximity and the tension in the room. Isabella saw understanding dawn on her assistant's face, followed immediately by worry. "Send her to my office," Isabella said, her professional mask sliding back into place. "I'll be right there." The reporter, Jennifer Walsh, was a seasoned dance journalist known for both her expertise and her willingness to pursue controversial stories. Isabella had been interviewed by her dozens of times over the years, but this meeting felt different from the moment Jennifer sat down. "Thank you for seeing me, Isabella. I'm working on a piece about the relationship between established artists and their protégés. There's been some interesting speculation about your mentorship of Daniel Torres." Isabella kept her expression neutral, calling on 2 decades of media training. "Mr. Torres is an exceptionally talented student. I'm proud of his development and his recent success. Your coaching relationship seems unusually intensive. Multiple sources have mentioned that you spend considerable private time together, often working late into the evening. Exceptional students require exceptional attention. That's how talent is developed." Jennifer leaned forward slightly. "I've heard rumors about the nature of your relationship with Mr. Torres. Would you care to comment?" "Mr. Torres is my student, nothing more. I find these implications unprofessional and, frankly, offensive." But even as Isabella spoke the words, she could see in Jennifer's eyes that the reporter didn't believe her. More troubling, she could see that Jennifer already had enough information to write her story with or without Isabella's cooperation. The interview continued for another 20 minutes, with Jennifer asking increasingly pointed questions about Isabella's teaching methods, her private life, and her relationships with male students past and present. Isabella answered each question professionally, but she left the meeting knowing that her worst fears were about to become reality. That evening, Isabella sat in her penthouse apartment, staring at the city lights and trying to prepare herself for what was coming. Her phone rang constantly, reporters, colleagues, board members from the academy, but she ignored them all. Daniel arrived at her apartment just after midnight, using the private elevator key she had given him months earlier. "I heard about the interview," he said immediately. "Maria told me." "It's over, Daniel. The story will be published within days, and when it is, my career is finished. We'll fight it. We'll deny everything." Isabella shook her head. "You don't deny these things. You ride them out, or you disappear, and I won't drag you down with me. I won't let you face this alone." "Yes, you will," Isabella said firmly. "You'll take the offer from San Francisco Ballet, and you'll build the career you deserve. And someday, when this is all blown over, maybe you'll understand that I did this to protect you." They held each other that night, knowing it would be their last time together. When Daniel finally left just before dawn, Isabella felt as if a piece of her soul walked out the door with him. 3 days later, Dance Magazine published Jennifer Walsh's exposé under the headline, "America's Prima Ballerina, The Secret Romance That Shattered a Legacy." The article detailed Isabella's relationship with Daniel, complete with unnamed sources, timeline speculation, and professional commentary about the power dynamics involved. Within hours, the story had been picked up by major media outlets. Isabella's phone exploded with interview requests, and protesters appeared outside the academy demanding her resignation. The board called an emergency meeting, and Isabella knew exactly what they would decide. As she prepared to face the destruction of everything she had spent 20 years building, Isabella wondered if love was supposed to hurt this much, and whether protecting Daniel had been worth sacrificing herself. The board meeting took place on a gray March morning in the conference room overlooking Central Park. Isabella sat at the polished mahogany table, facing 7 men and women who had once considered her not just a colleague but a friend. Now their faces were carefully neutral, their voices professionally distant as they read through prepared statements. "Isabella," began Margaret Chen, the board chairwoman, "we find ourselves in an unprecedented situation. The media attention surrounding your personal conduct has created significant concerns about the Academy's reputation and our ability to maintain enrollment and funding." Isabella listened as they detailed the complaints from parents, the withdrawal of several major donors, and the flood of negative publicity that had dominated dance media for 2 weeks. She had expected this outcome from the moment Jennifer Walsh's article was published, but hearing it spoken aloud still felt like a physical blow. "We've prepared a resignation statement," Margaret continued, sliding a document across the table. "It's generous in its terms. You'll retain your financial stake in the Academy and receive a substantial severance package. In return, you'll step down from all teaching and administrative responsibilities immediately." Isabella read through the carefully worded statement that portrayed her departure as a mutual decision, a desire to pursue new artistic opportunities, and focus on personal growth. It was corporate language designed to minimize damage to all parties involved, and she recognized it for what it was, a gilded cage disguised as a golden parachute. "And if I refuse to sign?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Then we'll be forced to terminate you for conduct detrimental to the institution's reputation. The financial arrangements would be significantly less favorable." Isabella signed the document without further discussion. There was no point in fighting a battle she had already lost. The press release went out that afternoon, generating another wave of media coverage that Isabella watched from her apartment while fielding, calls from her attorney, her publicist, and various reporters seeking her side of the story. She declined all interview requests and ignored the photographers who had taken up residence outside her building. Daniel called her every day, but she rarely answered. When she did, their conversations were brief and filled with an awkwardness that hadn't existed before their relationship became front-page news. He had accepted the position with San Francisco Ballet and would be moving to California within the month. Isabella told herself she was proud of his decision, that his career was what mattered most. "I need to see you before I leave," Daniel said during one of their rare conversations. "We can't end things like this. Daniel, we ended things months ago. What happened to us, what we had, it belongs in the past." "That's not true, and you know it. What we have is real, Isabella. It's worth fighting for." "Fighting for what?" "My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. I'm about to become a cautionary tale that dance instructors will tell their students for decades. What exactly are we fighting for?" The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Isabella wondered if Daniel had hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "We're fighting for the right to love each other without shame. We're fighting for the right to make our own choices instead of letting other people's opinions control our lives." But Isabella had already made her choice. Self-preservation had become her only priority, and that meant cutting all ties with the man whose love had cost her everything she had spent 20 years building. 3 months later, Isabella Reeves was largely forgotten by the dance world that had once celebrated her. Tabloid media occasionally revisited the scandal, usually in connection with Where Are They Now?, pieces that portrayed her as a fallen icon living in self-imposed exile. She sold her penthouse apartment and most of her belongings, moving to a small coastal town in Oregon, where nobody knew her name or cared about her former fame. She found work teaching at a local community center, instructing children and teenagers whose dreams were smaller but no less passionate than those of her former elite students. The salary was a fraction of what she had once earned, but Isabella discovered unexpected satisfaction in working with students who danced for pure joy rather than professional ambition. 6 months into her new life, Isabella received an unexpected visitor. Daniel stood on her doorstep on a crisp October afternoon, looking older than his 23 years, but more confident than she had ever seen him. "How did you find me?" she asked, her heart racing at the sight of him. "It wasn't easy. You've become quite good at disappearing." They sat on her small porch overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the sound of waves filling the silence between them. Daniel told her about his success in San Francisco, the roles he had danced, the reviews that praised his emotional depth and artistic maturity. Isabella listened with genuine pride, remembering the young man who had once struggled to find vulnerability in his movement. "I came here to tell you that you were wrong," Daniel said finally. "About us, about what we had, about what we could have." "Daniel, let me finish. You sacrificed everything to protect my career, but you never asked me what I wanted. You decided unilaterally that our love wasn't worth fighting for." Isabella looked out at the ocean, watching waves crash against the rocks below. "I was trying to save you from the scandal that destroyed me, but it didn't destroy you. Look at what you're doing now, teaching kids who love dance the same way we do, living honestly for the first time in years. You're more yourself than you ever were in New York." "I lost everything, Daniel. My career, my reputation, my academy. You lost a career built on other people's expectations and a reputation that required you to be perfect instead of human. But you found something more important. You found yourself." They talked until sunset, sharing stories of their separate journeys over the past year. Daniel described the loneliness of success without someone to share it with, while Isabella admitted to finding unexpected peace in her simpler life. As darkness fell, she made him dinner in her tiny kitchen, both of them acknowledging the domestic intimacy they had never been able to share in New York. "I'm moving back to New York in January," Daniel said as they cleaned dishes together. "I've been offered a principal position with American Ballet Theater." Isabella felt a familiar stab of anxiety. "Jonathan Blackwell's company. Are you sure? That's wise?" "I'm sure. And I want you to come with me." Isabella almost dropped the plate she was drying. "Daniel, that's impossible. I can't go back to that world. Not to that world, to a new world. One where we don't hide who we are or apologize for loving each other. I've learned something this year. Scandal fades, but regret is forever." That night, as they lay together in Isabella's narrow bed, she allowed herself to imagine the life Daniel was offering. It wouldn't be the life she had planned, but perhaps it would be the life she was meant to live. "What would we do in New York?" she asked quietly. "We'd start fresh, together. I've been offered a position that comes with enough income to support both of us while you figure out what comes next. Maybe you'll teach again. Maybe you'll choreograph. Maybe you'll write a book about what you've learned. The point is, you wouldn't have to do it alone." Isabella turned to face him in the darkness. "The scandal will follow us. People will always remember. Let them remember. Let them see that we survived their judgment and built something beautiful anyway." In the morning, Isabella walked Daniel to his rental car, both of them knowing that she hadn't given him an answer, but understanding that some decisions couldn't be rushed. As he drove away, Isabella stood in her garden and considered the choice before her. She could remain in Oregon, safe in her anonymity and simplicity, or she could take the greatest risk of her life and return to New York not as Isabella Reeves, the fallen prima ballerina, but as Isabella Reeves, the woman who chose love over fear. For the first time in a year, Isabella Reeves smiled with genuine anticipation for what tomorrow might bring. The woman who had once been America's most celebrated prima ballerina realized that her greatest performance might be the one she was about to begin, playing herself, honestly and without apology, regardless of what the critics might say. 3. Months later, dance magazines reported that Daniel Torres had been seen around New York with an unnamed older woman. Some publications speculated about her identity, but most of the dance world had moved on to newer scandals and fresher gossip. Isabella read these reports with amusement rather than anxiety, finally understanding that the opinion of people who had never risked anything for love was irrelevant to those who had risked everything. She and Daniel were building something new, together. Not just a relationship, but a life defined by their own values rather than external expectations. And if that wasn't a perfect ending, Isabella had learned that it was something far more valuable. It was a beginning.